Hello and welcome back to the Excellent Decisions podcast. This is the third in what we're calling a wisdom series of podcasts that we're doing at a very historic period of time with a lot of chaos and craziness going on in the world. And this is my way of being able to share some of the amazingly wise people that I've been blessed to learn from and work with over the last 20 years or so. And share some of the wisdom that I know is helping me get through these challenging times. So again, this is all with the intention of helping people make more excellent decisions, more decisions based on vision and values and value rather than stress and pressure, especially since, again, in today's world, we have seemingly an extra dose of that stress and pressure. So my guest today is Scott Coady, who is a good friend, a mentor, a teacher of mine, also a collaborator of mine. I'm very proud that he and I worked together to co-found an amazing organization called the Southern California Association of Transformational Leaders. And we just got to see each other at a meeting not too long ago of that group. One of the last meetings that happened for a while, right, Scott?
Yeah, dodged a bullet.
If that meeting had been scheduled 1 week later, it probably would not have happened. But it was great to be able to get together with that group, and I feel like it's helped me really be prepared for everything that's going on now. Scott has his own organization, the Institute for Embodied Wisdom. He does amazing leadership training. I had the opportunity to participate twice in a year-long or 6 months?
7 months.
When we were doing it, right? Yeah.
7 months.
It lingered, so we'll call it a year-long leadership program, where I learned some really amazing skills and information that has really helped me. And again, it's helping me right now. As before we hit record, I was telling Scott some of the ways that it's been helping me. So Scott, thank you so much for being willing to join us, to share some of your wisdom and join me in helping people in whatever ways we can to cope effectively with everything that's going on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Robert.
Oh. So I wanted to start with just kind of a general question. You know, there's so much going on in the world right now. You have your own unique perspective, which I value greatly. Like, what are you seeing out there? Like, what's your perspective, if you will, on everything that's going on out there now?
Well, obviously, this is a big interruption to the normal. If we take some lessons from one of the teachers I had is Dr. Fernando Flores, and he has a distinction called the breakdown. And something you declare for yourself, if you will, to create space so you can think, innovate, move forward, particularly when you're facing something you're not exactly sure how to overcome or achieve. And then sometimes breakdowns are declared for you. And we then have a, biology. And when that happens to us, we have a reaction like a, oh shit, kind of reaction. And, I certainly had my moment when certain things were canceled and, understanding the implications of what's happening. Like me, you have enough common sense to know that given the situation and what we know and the lack of testing and the lack of a vaccine or, medication, that the only thing we can do is stay home. And so it makes sense to us. So we stay home, now that creates some interesting dynamics, but, we're doing what we know to do, and that's good. So you get over the initial shock of it, and okay, well, I'm going to stay home. Okay, well, then I have challenges about staying home, but then we also have what are the opportunities? And I think a lot of people are seeing a lot of opportunities with staying home, getting things done, connecting with people in a different way, sharing their love and care for their friends and family remotely, taking on different projects. So the other teaching that keeps coming to the front for me, it's quite common, but just as a reminder, is no matter what happens in life, the mantra that I often find myself saying is, what does this make possible now? What what if this is for me? Um, what are the opportunities inside of this moment? Yeah, you had this intention for working, traveling, socializing, being with certain people, and that got interrupted. And then what's the opportunity? And when you're in the contraction, when you're in the emotional grab of it, it's hard to see those possibilities. So doing something to get out of that, like you're doing with these podcasts for yourself, for other people, there's other practices and things that you can do to then start to see what those opportunities are. Um, it can be quite liberating, creative, innovative. Who knows how many books are going to get written or new ideas are going to come forward and on the backside of this thing. So that's kind of my general overall perspective.
Okay. So one of the things that I know in terms of the approach to your work and the uniqueness of your work has a lot to do with embodiment. And one of the things that I know I've learned from you that's been incredibly valuable was to have a much greater awareness of the world around me and how it shows up in my body, like how my body becomes a way to experience everything that's happening around me. So can you talk a little bit about like your perception of first of all, the importance of having that awareness and how that kind of awareness can help us in times like this of how it shows up in our body?
Yeah. Um, well, let's just take the phenomena of staying home. So you have the logic to understand, the intelligence to understand the wisdom of staying home. So you decide to stay home. Fantastic. Then after a day or two or three, you might notice, you know, you might feel a little cabin fever or stir crazy, or, you need to do this or that, or, these are all sensations that are happening in our body. So, there's a couple things here. One is, are our thoughts and our actions being driven by the discomfort that's in our body? So we're uncomfortable, so then we will start thinking a certain way, making this bad, making it wrong, making it, making some catastrophe story about how bad this is, in terms of having to stay home, like becoming a victim. I think this is one thing that I'm worried for some people. They become a victim of this breakdown, if you will, of this
Mm-hmm.
outbreak of the virus. There's a virus. It started spreading amongst human beings and will continue to spread until we social distance ourselves enough for it to die out. So that's like a fact of nature, a fact of life on this planet. But then we have to watch our language of catastrophizing it, like, making it wrong, making it bad, saying how terrible it is, we're fucked, any of this kind of stuff. When we start to put these labels on it, then that becomes our reality. And then that kind of limits possibilities for us. And then, we can easily become a victim, and then staying home becomes terrible. So that's an example of, sensations maybe in the body, producing thoughts and declarations or linguistic utterances about the situation, which isn't going to be that helpful. And of course, one could go further down that path and be right about how bad it is and right about being a victim. And sure, we're going to have financial impact. I don't want that. You don't want that. Who wants to be financially impacted? Nobody. But can we be financially impacted and not be a victim at the same time? Yeah, I think we can. So then the next piece would be the discomfort in your body wanting to produce you doing or not doing certain actions. So maybe, overeating or just laying on the couch or being nervous or pacing, or and then you have this discomfort in your body that's producing you acting a certain way. And that, this is the normal part of being a human being. We have these kind of sensations, and it produces thoughts and it produces actions. And so the bigger question is, can we see all that happening while it's happening? Can we decouple our existence, if you will, from the automaticity of these processes? Can we be an observer of it and therefore not a victim of it?
Mm-hmm.
Then once we get there, then we can start making some choices. So one of the choices I've been making, and I've just been thrilled about it, is to go on a long bike ride every day, or if it's not raining, and it makes me feel so good. And when I say long, for me, it's been 3 hours. Okay, so, and I'm in the mountain roads, and I'm going up, and the view is beautiful, and I'm getting a workout. I've got my heart rate thing on, and I'm but as we all know, when we exercise, we feel great, right? So it manages my mood, makes me feel better about myself. It's getting me out of the house. It does wonders for my mental health, if you will. And it's almost like, wow, I'm kind of grateful that I'm going to have this much time to focus on getting in shape. So yeah, there's some impacts. But while I'm on that, Robert, I just wanted to take a little tangent, if you will. I'm in Ojai, California, and we had big wildfires back here, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm riding on Highway 33 behind Ojai. So it's an 11-mile climb up to the mountains behind Ojai. And all that area was burnt pretty severely. But here, I think it's 2 years after the fire we had here in the Ojai area. And I was struck by the beauty. It's been raining, the green, the new sprouts in the trees that are burnt, the new life, how nature is so amazing and so awesome. And then it came to me, like, this virus is like a wildfire. It's gonna come through, and it's gonna burn, and there will be, unfortunately, some negative impacts. But I'm very confident that a lot of beauty will come, and renewal, wisdom, for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
that chooses to look for it.
Well, you know that I'm in Sonoma, and it was the year before the Ojai fires that we had the fires here. And I'm sure you saw the same thing in your community in terms of with the tragedy and with the loss, and people losing homes and losing belongings, and in some cases people losing lives. There was the way the communities came together to support each other. And I'm already seeing that now. It's weird with this whole social distancing thing. There's a strong desire for people to get out and support each other, and we can't. We're kind of trapped. But
not right now. We can't.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a really good metaphor. I do want to go back to you touched a little bit on a really powerful part of my experience of your work about there's the facts, and then there's the story. And for people who have worked with me to any degree, they've probably heard me use your name associating the term meaning-making machines, that human beings are meaning-making machines. Whenever I use that expression, I attribute it to you, because you were the first person who shared it with me. And I think at this particular time, it's a really important thing to remember, because it's important to stay abreast of the facts, like what's going on out there.
Right.
And at the same time, it's important to remember that there's also the story. There's the meaning that different people and different venues and different channels are associating to the facts. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like how important that is? Why, I don't know, we want to get into why that happens, but.
Well, it's part of being a human being. It's what we do, and and if you've read the book Sapiens, you can see in that book that it's that fundamental ability that gave our species the ability to dominate all other species, particularly of other humans. If you're not familiar, real super quick, is that other human species, and even in the ape and gorilla populations, they found, that the maximum size of a community could be about 150 people. And that was the number of people or individuals that you could produce trust with and coordinate action with. Well, to coordinate action with, you have to have trust. And the trust is based on physical familiarity and knowing each other because of touch, of proximity, of distance, of seeing and being. And you could hold 150 relationships. What our species was able to do, the first species to do this, is and they all had language and they all had communication. They could coordinate action, build tools, talk about tigers over here and hunting over there and all of that. But the thing that we were able to do is that we were able to invent stories, myths, concepts independent of knowing each other. And we could believe in those things, which allowed us to produce trust with thousands of people at the same time. And then, 1,000 people coordinating action against 150. No wonder we're successful. But it was that notion, and that's how constitutive it is to being a human being, Homo sapien. That's what we do. We can't be a Homo sapien without doing that. So it comes hardwired in. This meaning making, the story, the belief, and we do that about everything all the time. We can't help it. So the question then is the story helping us or hurting us? Is it moving us forward or not? Is it powerful? And one of the things that you've been seeing, and I've been seeing, and anybody's paying attention, is a lot of people are already offering, on the internet particularly, all kinds of interpretations about what this means. Some of them are positive. They're made in like a positive sort of way, but is it the truth? Is it real? Does it really mean that? So we want to, just because it's a positive story doesn't mean it actually means that, right? And of course, there's the negative ones as well. And so just being able to watch that and decouple your automaticity for falling into, even like someone, let's say someone comes on, maybe somebody who's slightly prominent in a particular area or field, and says that it means, this virus outbreak means this. Then maybe we don't agree that it means that. So now we start arguing. And now we're arguing about something that we believe in something different, but maybe we shouldn't be arguing at all because it's just an interpretation. It's not really, it doesn't really mean that in the first place.
Yeah.
So one of the best pieces of work I've seen on this, if people are interested in this, is Daniel Schmachenberger's video on YouTube called War on Sense Making. Now there's part 1 and part 2. I'm recommending part 1. It's an hour and 50 minutes long, where he goes really deep into this topic of sense making and how we humans give over our agency to other individuals, because of their credentials or because of this or because of that. And how we can navigate making sense. It's an amazing video, and it goes really deep into the human experience, and I recommend it highly.
It's so funny how normally recommending an hour and 50-minute video would be laughable, but it's one of the one of the opportunities that we have now is we have those hour and 50-minute blocks of time because we're home. Yeah. We have internet, and most of us, and we can watch those videos. So yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and Daniel's a real credible guy. We know him. He spoke at our Association for Transformational Leaders meeting a couple of times, and he's really onto something here, and I recommend that highly. Yeah.
Well, and you touched on something that I think is really important in this time too. You talked about if somebody who has influence, somebody who has a community, is well known, has an element of fame, whatever it might be, that their point of view is sometimes taken differently than people who, started their podcast and their mom and their brother are listening, but we're not sure if anybody else is listening. But it reminds me, as you said that, about kind of the responsibility of leaders, that those of us who are a leader in any capacity at this particular time, it seems like the normal responsibilities of leadership become even more magnified. Would you agree?
I would. And then I would add that I think that one of the key things is when I was learning everything I learned to be able to do what I do now, one of my teachers was a Chilean philosopher named Rafael Echeverria. And he said something to me that I'm going to repeat. I just back then just hit me and it's never left me. And I think it's good to bring into this conversation. He says, Scott, you can never know how things truly are. You can only know how someone interprets them to be. And it's interpretation all the way down. And that's the key. So when we're leading, the key thing is to see that what we do is offer interpretations about what's possible or not possible. Something's happening, and then what's the story that we're going to choose to tell from the situation? What's the possibility? What are we going to talk about? And then in doing that, know that it's our interpretation, and then to be responsible for that. So if we are going to do meaning making or sense making, and as a leader and speak about things, to make sure we say this is my interpretation. I don't have a special pipe to God, and I don't know the truth. And then that, I think, is something that people can trust and believe in. Now, they might not agree with your interpretation; they might have a different interpretation, but that's secondary.
Well, and anybody who's listening to this who might be saying, well, I'm not a leader, I would encourage you to pause that at this particular time in history. Because I think we're all in a position to be leaders in terms of people are watching, like what we do and how we do it, whatever your role happens to be. It's a time for all of us to embrace that role as being leaders and setting an example to whatever degree we have the awareness and the skills, some of the things that Scott's talking about, some of the things we're talking about in all these podcasts. I think it's a time for all of us to see ourselves as leaders.
Well, we're certainly leaders of our own self.
Yeah. And I talk about that with excellent decisions all the time. I believe if people are making decisions based on their vision and their values and their value, and not letting the stress and pressure, both internal and external, kind of run the show, then they're a leader, whether anyone's following or not. Right. And but anyway, we're here for you, not for me to get up on my soapbox. I'm watching the clock and I'm amazed. We made a commitment that these are going to be 30 minutes or less, and it's impossible to take Scott's wisdom and fit it into a 30-minute window. But there is one more thing I want to make sure we touch on, because it's again something that I consistently talk about in my own work and attribute to you. And you touched on it a little bit with trust when you were talking about humans and the ability to create trust with larger groups. Can you talk a little bit more about the distinctions of trust that are so valuable and so important right now with all this information that's coming our way, and the decisions that we're forced to make about what should we or what can we trust?
Yeah, I will. So one thing that I was going to say earlier in terms of what I'm noticing, and maybe this is a nice little piece to put your question up against, is one of the things I'm noticing is, and I'm sure you are too, is that a lot of people are sharing a lot of information about their favorite immunity boosting regime. Mm-hmm. You need to take this, or you need to take that. And I mean, there's a lot of them, and so it's one thing to look at that and see, which one we're going to follow, who we're going to trust, So the trust distinctions, a lot of people think trust is a feeling, but no, it's an assessment that we're making. It's a judgment we're making. I'm choosing to trust you or not trust you. And there's a lot of there's several different interpretations about some of the components of trust, but the ones that I've lined up on that have served me well, that you and I've talked about in the past, are four, let's say, subcategories, if you will, for making that assessment. So the first would be reliability. Is a person reliable in terms of doing what they say they're going to do? Then sincerity. Are they sincere? Like, is what their private mind is thinking lined up with what they're actually saying? So generally people are sincere unless they're kind of a criminal, a liar, a con artist. So that's why when people get conned, it's so devastating, you know, and that's terrible. Competency. Do you have the ability to actually do what you say you're going to do? Like, you know how to do it. You've done it before several times. And then care. And care is about the emotional investment in the relationship. So the best example I have about that one is that the research indicates that doctors who get sued for malpractice tend to have poor bedside manner. They're sincere, they're reliable, they're competent, but they're not able to produce the feeling in the patient that they actually care about the patient. They make a small mistake and then they get sued. So those four things can be, you know, very, very helpful when you're trying to navigate this sea of trust. And then you can look at other people through that lens, and you can also look at yourself. You know, are you being sincere? Are you reliable? Are you competent to do what you say you're going to do? And are you able to demonstrate your caring?
I was literally using those distinctions this morning in a conversation with someone who was just completely overwhelmed by all the information, and they didn't know what to do and they didn't know who to believe. Mm-hmm. And I shared those distinctions with them, and it was almost like a medication of some sort. It just allowed them to calm down and to have like a tool that they could use to take all this, because it's like we're getting like a fire hose of information coming our way, and to be able to look at it, like you said, trust is normally just like a feeling, like I have to decide who to trust, or, you know, how do I make that decision? But to look through those four lenses of reliability and sincerity and competence and care allows me literally to just do that case by case by case piece, you know. Okay, well, this news channel, I know they don't care, so fine. Check.
And just to put a kind of a point on this, but particularly about the you know, all the different remedies or suggestions for immune system boosting. Joe Rogan's podcast, he had on a prominent immunologist named Michael Osterholm out of the University of Minnesota. Brilliant guy, scientist, grounded. And so Joe's asking, you know, him about a lot of these practical, you know, things about recommendations that are going around about boosting the immune system. And I have two things I want to say about that. And so this immunologist is saying, no, the research doesn't support that, you know, that doesn't support that, it doesn't support that. And Joe's like, oh my gosh, you know, he's getting his mind blown. He's asking the questions that, you know, that we'd all ask him, because he's believing that this would work or that would work. And then he says, well, what does work, you know? And you know, he said, well, about the only things that we know for sure that work are you know, drinking plenty of water, getting plenty of sleep, doing some exercise, eating right, you know, maybe some vitamin C, you know. And but I just looked at myself and I said, well, am I sleeping enough? Am I getting, you know, what can I do to improve my sleep? You know. So I've been making that a little bit of a mission out of my commitment to keeping my immune system, doing some exercise, but, you know, I'm logging my sleep and I'm taking care to get more sleep, to be in the best health I can be in. Yeah. And finally, I'll just add that in my life, I had the great privilege to have a bit of a one-on-one conversation many years ago with a prominent biologist named Umberto Maturana, who used to be the chair of the biology department for the all of University of Chile, and he wrote the book Tree of Knowledge, which looks at how we learn through our bodies, and or he calls it the biology of cognition. And I was asking him, I had just discovered acupuncture, and I was racing bicycles, and I was having this great response to acupuncture to heal my lungs, and I was starting to get healthier and winning races again. And I wanted to really improve my immune system. So I said, I'm thinking of doing either Tai Chi, martial arts, or yoga. Which one do you think would be the best to improve my immune system? And he laughed at me and he said, my dear chap, there's no such thing as a separate immune system. The human body is designed to be perfectly healthy all the time. It's only when we interrupt that perfection that we open ourselves up to disease and illness. So yes, if you fall down, then you get a big contusion, then your body puts a lot of energy to heal the contusion, which might open you up to a cold. Or if you don't drink enough water, the mucus doesn't flow, and then you're susceptible to bacteria or virus. And so he gave me a few examples like that. So, just drinking water and keeping ourselves hydrated, probably one of the best things we can do to protect ourselves, is let the body's natural intelligence take care of us.
All right, I feel so smart for creating this wisdom series and inviting you to be.
You are smart for doing it. That's good. That's a good move,
this
man.
is really, it's such a perfect example, and I hope that people who are with us in this moment and have listened will hit rewind and listen to this again, because there really is. This, to me, is such a perfect example of literally the kind of wisdom that I noticed was really helping me. Like, this kind of awareness, this kind of perspective. And if you're watching Scott and how he says what he says, not just what he says, but how he says it, who he is, how he shows up in the world, he's a person that's very well equipped to handle what we're all in a position right now to be faced with. So I'm thrilled that I just know how helpful this is going to be to anybody who's watching it. So thank you so much for being willing to do this. If people are curious and want to know more about you and the work that you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
Embodiedwisdom.com.
Embodiedwisdom.com. And we'll put that in the description of the podcast as well. But deep gratitude to you. Again, it's just a perfect example of, during these times where we are kind of sheltered in place, something that I feel like I can do to support people is share people like you with them, because I've been so blessed to have you in my life. So thank you. And for those of you who are listening, thank you for joining in, for your commitment to making more excellent decisions based on vision and values and value rather than stress and pressure. And we hope you'll continue to listen through the next 2 weeks to these daily sharing of different perspectives and wisdom from the network that I've been so blessed to be part of for the past 20 years or so. So thank you, Scott.
You're welcome, Robert. Thank you.
And we'll talk to you again on the next episode of the Excellent Decisions podcast.